Ladies and gentlemen, we're doing what no one else will do. We're reading you, word by word, the manifesto and research of conspiracy researcher Max Azzarello. We had no idea how dire our world situation was until we read Max's manifesto. This manifesto is extremely detailed and tells the exact events that will take place from the elite to us, the civilians of the world. Ladies and gentlemen, this manifesto lets you know that we are indeed in a state of emergency. We just don't know it yet. This manifesto lets you know that we are soon to approach a time of no return whatsoever. With the exception of 2 BitChute channels, no one, absolutely no one else, is reading Max's manifesto. No one, to be honest, even cares that Max sacrificed his life to get this message out. This showed us that unless you're David Icke, or Alex Jones, or any of the in-the-loop truthers or theorists, you are nothing and insignificant in the discussion of what the elite are doing and have done. Max has already been called by some theorists mentally ill, or a nut. Some have even labeled him as a puppet of the elite, while others have labeled him as some crisis actor. All of these labels are false and wrong. Max was a true conspiracy researcher who devoted the latter part of his life to exposing the elite. Unlike a lot of disingenuous truthers and theorists, Max was real and came from the old school version of conspiracy theorists. So, we ask you all to sit back with coffee or whatever your favorite beverage is and listen to this manifesto and see how we are currently on a timeline of destruction at the hands of the elite, a timeline that will destroy normal life as we know it. My name is Max Azzarello, and I am an investigative researcher who has set himself on fire outside of the Trump trial in Manhattan. This extreme act of protest is to draw attention to an urgent and important discovery. We are victims of a totalitarian con, and our own government, along with many of their allies, is about to hit us with an apocalyptic, fascist world coup. These claims sound like fantastical conspiracy theory, but they are not. They are proof of conspiracy. If you investigate this mountain of research, you will prove them too. If you learn a great deal about Ponzi schemes, you will discover that our life is a lie. If you follow this story and the links below, you will discover the rotten truth of post-truth America. You will learn the scariest and stupidest story in world history. And you will realize that we are all in a desperate state of emergency that requires your action. To my friends and family, witnesses and first responders, I deeply apologize for inflicting this pain upon you. But I assure you, it is a drop in the bucket compared to what our government intends to inflict. Because these words are true, this is an act of revolution. Last March, a billionaire named Peter Thiel started a bank run on Silicon Valley Bank. I knew enough about Thiel that I found this incredibly suspicious. My hunch was that this was intentional, though I couldn't fathom why. I began investigating online and quickly found cryptocurrency's fingerprints all over it. The bank run occurred just days after Silvergate Bank, which catered almost exclusively to crypto companies, had collapsed. Meanwhile, several crypto cheerleaders were all over financial media, warning of a regional banking crisis, and nobody in the media was addressing the clear crypto connections. I dug deep, into the financials of Tills, venture capital firm Founders Fund, and eventually uncovered the following. All proven, many times over. Cryptocurrency is our first planetary, multi-trillion-dollar Ponzi scheme. It was expressly created for this purpose by a laundry list of rich and powerful people out of Stanford, Silicon Valley, and Harvard, and Facebook. The March 2023 bank failures were all intentional. The banks were used to move out stolen Ponzi money. This signals that they're no longer dumping cash in to keep the cryptocurrency Ponzi afloat, and that it will soon go insolvent, as all Ponzis must. When the Ponzi scheme goes insolvent, it will take down half the stock market with it. The perpetrators used their major companies to pipe into the blockchain so that they could funnel money out from the crypto exchanges. This includes Google, Tesla, Apple, PayPal, Facebook, Disney, Walmart, Target, InBev, Zoom, and countless others. It is a Ponzi scheme so large that it created global inflation, which is why the price of Bitcoin has been a remarkable leading indicator for inflation rates. Victims who bought crypto don't realize their money has already been stolen, so the money gets double counted by the victims and the criminals who stole it. As it turns out, our elites are awash in Ponzi schemes. Stanford's StarTex.com investment fund, and Jeffrey Epstein's program for evolutionary dynamics that he ran at Harvard, are both fake science, Ponzi factories that these schools have invested billions in. They are filled with fraudulent companies that use smoke and mirrors to promise miraculous new technology, but always collapse while the perpetrators only get richer. Funneling trillions of dollars in stolen cash through the stock market created the largest stock market anomaly in history. The stock chart signature of a Ponzi scheme is a massive increase while they stack up cash, and then a massive fall as they funnel out the stolen cash. This chart shape appeared in all the companies I've already listed. In order to explain the massive anomaly, our criminal government unleashed COVID-19 on the world and told us that these were the stay-at-home stocks. Ponzi schemes are vicious beasts, and cryptocurrency is history's largest Ponzi by orders of magnitude. It could best be described as an economic doomsday device intentionally made to shatter the world economy. The U.S. government is fully involved in this totalitarian con. To illustrate its bipartisan support, I'll note that nearly every participant of the Clinton Global Initiative has ties to cryptocurrency, while two of the biggest tech VCs who participated are Donald Trump associates, Josh Kushner and Anthony Scaramucci. To better understand our form of government, I will point you to one of the most astonishing pieces of standalone evidence I've found.
Arkansas Governor Bill Clinton's 1988 DNC speech, where he nominated Mike Dukakis for president against George H.W. Bush.
The speech is a vile, mean-spirited roast of Dukakis, and it makes no sense whatsoever. For Clinton to ruthlessly attack a member of his own party should have been political suicide, and he repeatedly mocks the noble and earnest qualities of Dukakis. Notably, actor Rob Lowe, who was supporting Dukakis, was victim of a teen sex blackmail operation at the DNC that year. Since we know Clinton is a close associate with teen sex blackmail artist Jeffrey Epstein, we can suddenly make perfect sense of the nonsensical speech by applying this lens. Bill Clinton is a cocky mob boss who blackmailed Mike Dukakis because Dukakis thought his job was to help the public. He teases out the future public revelation that Kitty Dukakis drank rubbing alcohol and offers a strange anecdote about the crack epidemic that reveals he is an exceedingly proud drug runner. What does this revelation tell us? That our government is conning us completely. That Bill Clinton was secretly on former CIA Director George H.W. Bush's side, and that the Democrat versus Republican division has been entirely manufactured ever since. Clinton is with Bush. Gore is with Bush. Trump is with Hillary. And so on. When they present themselves in public, they are acting as characters that are against one another, practicing kayfabe, as wrestlers do.
As it turns out, we have a secret kleptocracy. Both parties are run by financial criminals whose only goals are to divide, deceive, and bleed us dry. They divide the public against itself and blame the other party while everything gets worse and more expensive and a handful of people take all the money. Since it is fully parasitic, a secret kleptocracy is an incredibly unstable form of government. Left to its own devices, it can only lead to fascism or failed state. One of the key findings of this research is that Harvard University is one of the largest organized crime fronts in history, which is how they churn out billionaires. It's a major hub of this sprawling criminal network. As it turns out, dozens of the writers of The Simpsons went to Harvard, so I asked myself the question, if The Simpsons served the interests of organized crime, how would it do so? Well, it offers a dysfunctional family, suffering from moral decay, a community that's incapable of solving its problems, a worker drone who slaves away for an evil billionaire, and cathartic laughs for our poor collective circumstances. There are some notable specifics as it relates to this research, too. In Marge versus the monorail, the townsfolk are too oafish and too divided to invest in the town's needs, like, for example, fixing Main Street, and they fall for the charms of a dazzling showman with a bogus monorail Ponzi scheme. When we know that the show is closely linked to an organization that invests billions of dollars in Ponzi factories, this becomes quite damning. In Lisa the Iconoclast, Lisa discovers that town founder, Jebediah Springfield, was a secret criminal con artist, and that the townsfolk's lives are a lie. Realizing that this is an important discovery, she desperately tries to get the townsfolk to listen to her. But they meet her with hostility and apathy, disbelief, and partisanship, and she fails to get through to them. Ultimately, she realizes that the town is so far gone that perhaps it's better for them to be lied to by con artists, and she keeps the secret to herself. And here I've been, like Lisa Simpson, desperately trying to get friends, family, and the public to believe the proof of a totalitarian con that I'm trying to show them, and they've turned away with hostility, apathy, disbelief, and partisanship. And so we realize the criminal truth of The Simpsons. Our elites are telling us that our eroding collective circumstances are our own fault, and we can't do anything about it, all while they steal the American dream from us. It is, for lack of a more elegant word, brainwashing. Lastly, we string these major discoveries together. Cryptocurrency is an economic doomsday device, and our government is a secret kleptocracy. The Simpsons exists to brainwash us. From there, the only research we need is critical thinking, and we're able to piece together the true story of our circumstances. Consider America since 1988. Institutions like healthcare and universities have become parasitic in their skyrocketing prices. The news media tells us to be angry and tribalized. Daytime television warns us of moral decay. The local news tells us to fear our neighbors. The Simpsons tells us we're too oafish and divided to save the American dream. Seinfeld tells us to celebrate the assholes and be irritated by all the normal people around us. Reality TV tells us that real life is filled with hedonism and strife. Social media, owned by crypto criminals like Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk, is flooded with nonsense conspiracy theories and memes, reminding us that we are hopeless, helpless, anxious, depressed, ironic, scared, apathetic, escapist, lonely, misguided, and jaded, telling us that we can't do anything but have a laugh at our circumstances. Liberals mock the hypocrisy of conservatives. Conservatives mock the hypocrisy of liberals, and our collective circumstances erode. The left shouts that all cops are bastards, which ensures they'll be hated by the police and the public, and flies in the face of leftist theory. The public's distrust of the government is at an all-time high, but so is the belief that we are helpless to do anything about it. And with all this, a sharp rise in apocalyptic messaging. Climate change will kill us all. COVID will kill us all. Vaccines will kill us all. AI will kill us all. No matter the bubbles we ascribe to, we're bombarded with existential crises, with no solutions. We've seen a surge in apocalyptic film, literature, and video games that tell us there is no way out of our poor circumstances but total societal breakdown. Zombies tell us that the public is our enemy. If you go to your nearest convenience store, you can buy a can of water called liquid death. This is our rotten farce. For our entire lives, we have been flooded with media that's designed to slowly steer us into a world where the American dream was dead, where the public was fully divided against itself, where everybody believed we were powerless to do anything about our worsening circumstances. It is also they can organize an unprecedented apocalyptic rug pull on the entire populace as they pivot to fascism, which is perhaps best understood as kleptocracy at the barrel of a gun. When we piece it all together, we understand the truth. We are in a totalitarian doomsday cult. Now, why on earth would our elites do this? There are many reasons, but the simplest is because capitalism is unsustainable, and they knew it. Climate change and resource extraction would catch up eventually, so they never intended to sustain it. They knew all along that they would gobble up all the wealth they could, and then yank the rug out from under us so they could pivot to a hellish fascist dystopia. Things escalated wildly in 1988, when former CIA Director George H.W. Bush got the White House, but this plan had been in action long prior. Why is Stanley Kubrick's comedy about mutually assured destruction called Dr. Strangelove? Or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb? Because he was a cocky secret fascist who was getting us to stop worrying and love the bomb. Why did he make A Clockwork Orange? So we'd rejoice at ultraviolence, designed to desensitize us to the horrors of the world. Why were the Manson family murders crawling with cover-ups and intelligence agents? Because our government wanted to make us fear for our lives and believe that hippies are deranged psychopaths. Why did Walt Disney produce a fraudulent documentary that told us lemmings follow each other off cliffs so we would believe it? Why did the Beatles tell us to fear the taxman, to scoff at revolution, chase nonsense conspiracy theories, and that happiness is a warm gun so we would believe it? Why did Easy Rider tell us that the hippie movement was dead so we would believe it? Why did Chinatown end with defeatism in the face of massive corruption so we would believe it? Why did George Orwell tell us of a hellish future of totalitarian control that we are powerless to stop so we would believe it? Why did Wall Street tell us that greed is good so we would believe it? Why did Do the Right Thing tell us that we're all racially tribalized so we would believe it? Why did Simpsons creator Matt Groening make a comic strip called Life in Hell so we would believe it? And on and on and on and on. When it comes to any popular media, if you ask yourself the question, why would secret doomsday cult kleptocrats want the public to consume this? You will find your answers. This is obviously very bad news. However, the biggest lie we've been told is that we are powerless. We've got one way out of hell world, and that's for the public to realize that we've been conned completely, so we can build a united movement that shatters every lie they've told us, that mocks this rotten farce as loudly as it deserves, and aims at nothing short of abolishing our criminal government, so we can build one that serves the public. To understand this story is to see right through the con, to become immune to the endless sea of criminal propaganda, and to feel the great joy and power that comes with freedom. If a small number of people quickly put on these truth-colored glasses, we are in for an unimaginably bright future. However, if they don't, then we get an apocalypse. For more information, I've put together a booklet that includes other major findings and a map to a sea of proof along with all the other essays on my site. To see this discovery unfold in real time, along with further explanations, hundreds of pieces of evidence not covered here, advice, inspiration, political theory, and the heart and soul of a man, escaping history's largest doomsday cult, see my Instagram story highlights. I apologize for leaving things so scattered, but this has been an exhausting affair. So long as you understand this true ideology, you will be able to learn the whole story. Here is a federal lawsuit that I filed against dozens of perpetrators of the cryptocurrency Ponzi, not for litigation, but just to preserve the information and attach my name to it. I was terrified and hadn't slept in days, and it shows, but it served its purpose of keeping myself alive long enough to keep learning and telling this story. I no longer have my original research files from the crypto rabbit hole. If you want to see them, you'll have to get my laptop back from the government. Ask them how they got it. It is a very fun story. I hope you know how powerful you are. I wish you a hell of a lot more than luck.
Hey, want to learn the biggest secret in the world? In March 2023, sketchy billionaire Peter Thiel started a bank run. I did 1,500 hours of research, and I learned all their rotten secrets. The big one is that cryptocurrency is history's first planetary, multi-trillion-dollar Ponzi scheme. That's an economic doomsday device. And when that Ponzi goes insolvent, as all Ponzis must, we'll get the worst economic collapse in world history. And every powerful person you can think of is in on it. Want to know why everything gets worse and more expensive? That's because we live in a secret kleptocracy. That's when the government gets taken over by con artists whose only job is to steal from the public. And I hope you know this is wonderful news, because now that the public knows about the secret kleptocracy, they get to abolish their criminal government.
We now have a social credit system right here in the United States that has been installed quietly, interestingly, not by the government, but instead by private businesses and banks. It's in similar ways, really, to the way the Chinese Communist Party's social credit system works. Rather than use a CCP standard of adherence to the ruling regime, it's instead based on the social justice standards under ESG, or environmental and social governance. As ESG criteria assesses businesses' sustainability and ethics, a personal ESG score, just like the big corporate ones, offers insight into a person's commitment to sustainable practices, and apparently we're all committed to this whether we like it or not. Your personal ESG score is calculated based on three main factors: environmental, social, and governance, which includes, for example, your purchase history. What products are you choosing to buy? Already, apparently, purchasing a gun, buying alcohol, or other items can affect your personal ESG score. Your sales history, your public records, including your credit reports. All of these are considered to gauge your impact on the environment and society. But because people don't want these things, they've found that they have to try to force people to want these things.
Ow. So you can keep an eye on me?
Yes.
A World Economic Forum insider has blown the whistle and admitted that the globalist #1 goal is to implant CBDCs as a chip under the skin of every man, woman and child in the world, with or without their consent. And they will stop at nothing to achieve this aim. According to Professor Richard Werner, the globalist elite have been carefully planning this attack on humanity for decades, and they are now preparing to drop a cluster munition in the heart of civil society to soften people up so they will accept the chip.
Charter City is stunned by the sudden rollout of Rook Unlimited's most fantastic device ever. The Smart Mark. Throw your other devices away, because the Smart Mark is more than just a phone. It's part of you. Use it as cash. Book your travel. And even shoot video. Distribution points are all over the city. And don't let the lines discourage you. The Rook Unlimited Smart Mark is worth the wait.
I never realized how wonderful technology could make me feel. The Smart Mark has brought order to my life.
And the best part? It's absolutely free. A gift of thanks to our city from Rook Unlimited.
If anybody is qualified to talk about the evil agenda of the globalist elite, it's Richard Werner. As a rising economist and WEF Young Global Leader in the early 2000s, he was personally groomed by Klaus Schwab for a key role in the WEF. The future was bright for Werner, who, as a young global leader, had access to Klaus Schwab's contact list, including all the key strategic partners and stakeholders that Schwab likes to boast about. Werner worked with the Japanese government and invented quantitative easing. He published books that were picked up by major publishers and became bestsellers, much like Yuval Noah Harari in recent years. Life for Werner on the WEF gravy train was easy. Life was good. But then his conscience got in the way and he decided he couldn't continue working for the most evil people in the world and plotting the downfall of humanity. Since parting ways with the WEF and finding himself banned from Davos, every major institution in the world has declared him persona non grata. Cambridge University, one of the leading educational institutions in the world, offered him a job, only to retract it when they discovered that he was a Christian who believes big banks are a cancer on society. You might want to listen to what he's got to say. According to Werner, the globalist elite understand that there's a hurdle in getting people to implant a chip under their skin. So they are planning a series of disruptions and crises to prepare humanity to accept a universal basic income, also known as globalized communism, in which the chip will be necessary to receive your monthly stipend.
They have literally delayed their agenda. Because I think it's so important to them, they've been very careful about the timing, and let's wait a little longer, let's have this crisis first, let's have COVID first, soften them up. But they've delayed, because the technology was already ready around 2015 to roll out. And what people don't mention is, what do these CBDCs actually look like? At the moment, there's a bit of talk about this being phone-based apps. And yes, that is the initial phase. But what was already ready around 2015 is the ultimate goal. What they really want, apparently, I was told by a central banker, is, CBDCs looks like a small grain of rice that they want to put under your skin, which is, in my view, a violation of human dignity. And they realize there is a hurdle. So to get people to accept this, there will be, why suddenly all the billionaires saying, let's have universal basic income?
Ultimately, we will have to have some kind of universal basic income. I don't think we're going to have a choice.
Universal basic income.
Universal basic income. I think it's going to be necessary.
So it means that unemployed people will be paid across the globe.
Yeah.
Because there is no job, machine, robot is taking over.
That's simply and I want to be clear that these are not things that I wish would happen. These are simply things that I think probably will happen. And if my assessment is correct and they probably will happen, then we need to say, what are we going to do about it? And I think some kind of a universal basic income is going to be necessary. Now, the output of goods and services will be extremely high. So with automation, there will come abundance. There will be almost everything will get very cheap. I think I think we'll just end up doing a universal basic income. It's going to be necessary
because the story is going to be, now we've created this vast unemployment and disruption and crises. Well, we need universal basic income. you will get 2,000 euros into your account every month. But of course, to run this efficiently, we need to use the latest technology. So, you need the CBDC chip implant. But how many people will say, okay, fine, £2,000, 2,000 euros,
a surprising proportion, shockingly, obviously, to me or yourself, but we've seen years ago in Sweden, there has been a substantial small minority take-up of what's currently much larger. It's kind of like a little cylinder in stainless steel, I guess, maybe it's titanium or something, and they're doing it because they just want to. They want to be early adopters of this nonsense. So if anyone's listening and that sounds fanciful or conspiracy theorish, the fact is in Sweden they are taking it up and in other places, and that's not coming out of nowhere. That's not just some local tech firm makes this. It's part of the early adoption kind of tendrils coming out from the mothership. So yeah, interesting times ahead, but now, as you say, Richard, now is the chance for awareness, wider awareness, and the time to start taking action in any way you can.
Exactly.
Of all the major events that happened in the past 3 decades, personally, I think that the Corona era was the peak of what manipulation and hysteria and fear-mongering may look like. And to the extent that critical experts, for example, called it mass psychosis of the people. Shall we expect worst in the coming years? I know this is a pessimistic question, or is that already, or is that already the limit of what the people can accept from the governments?
Yeah, I don't think COVID was the limit. I think for them, it was for them to go farther than they've ever gone before. And, based on what they learned about how people reacted to what they tried to do during the COVID era, that can allow them to, adjust certain factors and variables for future experiments in mass hysteria. So, in the U.S. specifically, in independent media, there were people that drew parallels between COVID-era hysteria and post-9/11 hysteria in the U.S. And I think that's definitely fair. But consider that, post-9/11 hysteria was concentrated in the United States of America, whereas the COVID hysteria was throughout the world. So it was replicating that same type of hysteria, not necessarily, and, in the 9/11 era, of course, it wasn't just terrorism hysteria. It was also biosecurity hysteria because of the intimately related anthrax attacks. So you had sort of the agenda for biosecurity in there as well, but within the United States. And this was an effort to see, in my opinion, if they could replicate the hysteria at the global level, which they pretty successfully did. The question is, will the same people that realized they were had during COVID, but were compliant at first, how compliant will they be in future crises going forward? And so what I anticipate is that there's going to be a series, instead of having one big event, they're likely to do a series of cascading crises that do things like drastically impact supply chains, drastically alter essential digital infrastructure, specifically banking and financial systems, under the guise of cyber attacks and all of this. So during the COVID era, there was I guess you could call it foreshadowing of groups like the World Economic Forum saying, after COVID, there will be a cyber pandemic, the consequences of which will, make COVID look like nothing, essentially. Paraphrasing there, but that's essentially what was stated. And now the World Economic Forum has said, they said in the beginning of 2023 that there will be some sort of massive cyber event that will make COVID look like nothing, and it will happen before January 2025, which, now that we're in 2024, if they are correct, would be sometime this year.
What we are doing, and I think what every major central bank is doing, is we're trying to stay in the frontiers of what's going on in digital finance. And it has many, many different areas. It has applications in wholesale finance, in the payment system. And so we to serve the public, these issues have become very front burner in the last 5 or 6 years. We need to be knowledgeable about all that. So we actually do have people trying to understand things that are, but it's wrong to say that we're working on a CBDC and then we've secretly got a lab here where we've got one and we're just going to spring it on Congress at the right moment. We don't. I haven't at all in my own mind made a decision that I think this is something the U.S. should be doing. I just think it's something we need to understand, and we do have people who are keeping up with that as part of the broader payments landscape. That's how I would characterize it.
Well, as it turns out, things might not be exactly as Jerome Powell described. U.S. Representative Tom Emmer, who has previously introduced a bill to ban any form of a CBDC in the United States, posted on X. If you don't think the Fed is pursuing a CBDC, think again, says Emmer. The Fed gave this to my staff during a presentation earlier this Congress. They view a CBDC as one of their key duties. And you can clearly see it is a printed, what appears to be a booklet on the photo with automated clearinghouse and Fed Now service listed, and then a CBDC included on the list. And it is a list of key duties. By the way, automated clearinghouse and Fed Now are potentially those systems that would help roll out a digital currency.
We do have this phenomenon, as we touched on, where we have gold hitting new all-time highs, both in futures markets and in spot gold.
Well, we just got our clearest sign yet that the US dollar is about to lose its reserve currency status, the standing in the world by which all transactions, of course, are carried out in US dollars. Well, we just got an amazing report over the weekend about the US interest that is set to hit 1.6 trillion by the end of the year, making it the largest US government outlay. Think about that. The United States government now spends more on the interest payments on the debt than anything else in their budget. More than all of the wars that the United States government funds around the world, which is over 9 right now. We just agreed to send an additional couple thousand pounds of ammunition and bombs to Israel. Of course, we are actively funding what's happening in Ukraine, then in Yemen, then in Syria, actively funding what's happening in Haiti. So just think about that for a second. The debt alone is one thing. The interest payments on that debt is where we are set to lose our reserve currency status. Now, this, according to Zero Hedge, which reported over the weekend, and I think they were really the first to cover this, and I'll even just sort of quote what they're saying. Several days ago, we were the first to point out 2 new striking developments on the dollar's crusade to lose reserve currency status.
Attention Americans, your money, your privacy, your future, all could be at risk with central bank digital currencies, or CBDC.
We've got some bad news. SWIFT, the payment messaging system, which is utilized by the majority of the global banks, have announced that they're setting up a CBDC platform that's coming out in 12 to 24 months. So this is the thing we have been talking about for a long time on this channel, and unfortunately, like we've predicted, it is becoming reality.
There's a new effort underway to regulate every single financial transaction that occurs in this country through something called the Central Bank Digital Currency, CBDC. If that happens, we're done.
CBDCs are the latest tool for central banker control, giving government bureaucrats and central bankers unrestricted access to your personal transactions and control over your money. Don't let them take away your financial privacy and independence that the use of cash provides. Visit Our Country, Our Choice and learn about the dangers of CBDCs.
CBDC. If that happens, we're done.
They're trying to put into place a digital transaction control grid, which will tell you what you can do with your money, when you can do it, where you can go. If they don't want you to be able to use your money more than 5 miles from your home, that's it. Your money will turn off 5 miles from your home. If they decide they want to double taxes, they just take it out of your account. You know, it's all taxation with absolutely zero representation. And the interesting thing about it, once they get the system into place, it won't even be, I believe it won't even be your national central bank that will control. It will be the Bank of International Settlements and the global systems that will control.
This is something we all need to be prepared for. So let's go right over to, first and foremost, Investopedia, because I want you to understand the scale or the reach of the current SWIFT payment system, because you've got to look at their CBDC announcement through that lens. So we start with Investopedia and look at the hard numbers here, guys. More than 11,000 global SWIFT member institutions, i.e. banks, sent an average of 44.8 million messages daily through the network in November 2022. So 11,000 banks sending 45 million messages daily through the SWIFT system. This is a company that pretty much reaches every single bank in the world, in the Eurodollar system. We're not just talking about the Fed. We're not just talking about the domestic US banks. We're talking about the whole entire global network.
Start a fucking revolution. Start a fucking revolution. Start a fucking revolution. You've got nothing to lose.